Welfare cheats cheat us all, you said, Taoiseach, in a campaign now universally recognised as being based on false figures, which your own department questioned. You cynically used public money to enhance your appeal to Fine Gael members. That campaign may now be largely forgotten, but the agenda behind it remains. It was more than just a dog whistle campaign for votes. It was part of an ideological assault on social welfare. Under the guise of Labour activation pushed by Fine Gael and Labour, unemployed people have been demonised, have been victimised and have had their social welfare cut, all in the service of constructing a republic of precarity, of driving people into the kind of low-paid, precarious work which has become widespread, with 1 in 4 workers now in part-time employment, with 30% of workers low-paid, with 8% of workers having hours which change week to week or month to month. And the result is a complete lack of stability, of security, of people's ability to plan their lives. They are existing instead of living. The counterpart to that precarious employment is precarious unemployment in the job path machine. 140,000 unemployed people have been turned into opportunities for profit for private companies. In the process, without significant debate, the provision of social welfare has been partially privatised. I've spoken to a number of people who've been through JobPath. They say they're not given any real training. They're just supervised while looking for jobs on a computer, meaning that it's pointless travel for many. They describe it as demeaning, as patronising, as infantilising. And what hangs over all of their interactions with private companies is the threat of having their social welfare cut by more than €40, leaving people to try to survive on €150 or less a week. Since JobPath has been introduced, the number of people who have had these so-called penalty rates applied has gone from 5,000 in 2015 in a year to 16,000 in 1 year alone last year. 6,500 JobPath participants have had their dole cut. On the other hand, €84 million of public money has been paid to just 2 companies, CTEC and Turas Nua. They get money each time someone signs a personal progression plan, and they get paid job sustainment fees. Both CTEC and Working Links, one of 2 companies behind Turas Nua, have been accused of fraud in the operation of similar schemes in Britain. Deputy Catherine Murphy raised a very serious case of fraud by CTEC in Ireland in the Dáil last October. But all of that has been justified up until now on the false basis that it works, that it gets people into employment. But now it's completely exposed by the government's own figures, which came out 3 weeks ago. Only 18% of those that engage in JobPath end up in full-time employment. €84 million has been given to these private companies to get people jobs that they would have gotten themselves. And so, Taoiseach, the question is, will you now read the writing on the wall for JobPath? Will you agree that the scheme needs to be scrapped, and instead of privatising social welfare and handing money over to private companies, you should invest in proper education, training and real jobs for unemployed people?
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
Thanks, Ceann Comhairle. Welfare fraud is very real, and it is a real problem in this country, and it is a real problem in every Western society. And even if we take the lowest estimate of the scale of welfare fraud in this country, it's about €40 million a year, and that happens to be a lot of money in my view. And let's not forget that people who engage in welfare fraud aren't the poor and vulnerable. They're people who are pretending to be poor and vulnerable. They're people who are working and claiming. Somebody who is working, not paying their taxes on that work, and also claiming welfare at the same time. I don't believe that's defensible or acceptable. There are people who are pretending to have a disability they don't have, pretending to care for someone that they're not caring for. People pretending to be somebody they're not, or claiming a pension for somebody who's long dead. And it really disappoints me to hear left-wing politicians in this country constantly defending fraudsters as though they're entitled to the benefits that they're stealing, and they are not. And it is absolutely the work of this government to prevent and crack down on welfare fraud in any way we can. and you only need to look at the court reports every day or every other day to see the detail of some of those cases and what people have been doing to defraud our system. And the reason why we crack down on welfare fraud, Ceann Comhairle, isn't ideological. The reason why we crack down on welfare fraud is, first of all, it's wrong. Whether it's tax fraud or welfare fraud, it's wrong, and we act against it. And in doing so, we ensure that the welfare budget is protected, that the welfare budget is protected for those who are entitled to it. Our pensioners, people with disabilities, carers, the unemployed, lone parents, blind, widows and others. And because of that, we've been able now, 2 budgets in a row, to increase the state pension, to increase payments to carers, to increase payments to people with disabilities, and to increase payments to people who are unemployed. So that's the government policy, which is to crack down on welfare fraud, to make sure that we protect the welfare budget for those who deserve it and those who need it, particularly pensioners, the disabled, carers and people who are unemployed. And I'm very disappointed to hear politicians on the left continuously equivocating on this issue and not condemning welfare fraud, and I noted that the Deputy did not do so on this occasion. In terms of tackling unemployment, I think this is one of the areas where everyone acknowledges that we've seen a real turnaround in the last number of years. Unemployment peaked at 15%, it's now down around 6%, and long-term unemployment down to 3%. And that isn't just because of a recovering economy. Unlike a lot of recoveries, we saw unemployment fall rapidly once the recovery started. That's not the norm in recoveries. Usually there's a lag. And the reason why unemployment fell very rapidly in Ireland once the recovery started is because of the kind of active policies that the government engaged in, both on the enterprise side and on the welfare side. Had we listened to the Deputy opposite, had we pursued the policies that he advocated, the ones that have been attempted in Greece and Zimbabwe and Venezuela and other countries, not only would we have mass unemployment, we'd have a mass refugee exodus from this country, as we have at the moment from Venezuela to Colombia.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Murphy.
Thanks. It's like Enda Kenny is back, isn't it? He managed not to answer the question at all. Instead, he managed to attack something that I didn't say and then go an ideological attack about Venezuela. I think he might have even said Colombia and Greece. So let's go back to the questions. Okay, the question is that your job path scheme fails. It fails in its stated aim of getting jobs for people. That's what the facts now demonstrate. Only 18%, no higher than if people don't have access to job path. These companies have been accused of fraud in Britain. What are you doing to make sure they aren't engaged in fraud here? And finally, to deal with the curveball you throw that you're going to stand over and double down on your rhetoric about welfare fraud. You said 40 million 2 minutes ago, but your advertising campaign said 500 million. Which is it? Who's engaged in fraud here? You were engaged in fraud with public money against unemployed people to demonise them in order to drive precarious work, precarious unemployment, and you're continuing in that same Thatcherite vein with here. But can you please answer the question in terms of job path, which was the question that was asked?
Taoiseach, to conclude on this matter.
Yeah, I said even the lowest estimate is 40 million, and I note that you haven't. I note that you haven't refuted that. The figure of 500 million, and it says what it said in the tin: fraud and control, fraud and control. They're two different things. In relation to the whole issue of job path, what you have to do with job path is look at the counterfactual analysis. People who are long-term unemployed can be referred down a number of different routes. They can have assistance through the intro service provided by the Department of Social Protection. They can be assisted through job path, which is outsourced to 2 companies. Or they can be referred to bodies like local employment schemes, for example. It's interesting to compare counterfactually how people perform under those different headings. And there is a complaints procedure in place. If somebody feels that they aren't getting a proper service from JobPath, they can make a complaint directly to the company. If they're not satisfied with that, they can then go to the department and make a complaints procedure through there. Now, it's important to note how the companies are paid. They get a registration fee per client referred to them, but after that they only get paid if the person gets a full-time job and sustains that job. So the incentive is there for the companies, not just to get people into any old job, but to get them into a job that's full-time and sustains for more than 13 weeks. And the longer the person keeps that job, the more the company gets paid. And the strength in it is in the results. Unemployment now falling below 6%, long-term unemployment now below 3%. Where would we be today if the policies of the hard left had been followed in this country? Mass unemployment.